Hello and welcome to the Home Assistant Podcast. As usual, my name is Rohan, and with me I have Phil. Hey, Phil.
Hey, Rohan, how's it going?
Good. And today we have special guest, Jason. Hey, Jason.
Hey guys, how's it going? Long time listener, first time caller here on the Home Assistant Podcast.
This episode is sponsored by Home Assistant Cloud by Nabukasa. Easily access your local Home Assistant instance remotely for a small monthly fee that supports the Home Assistant and the ESP Home Projects. Configurations done by the user interface, so there's no fiddling with router settings, SSL certificates, or any YAML. All right, Jason, let's jump in. Why don't we start off? Just tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah, so I, like a lot of us, are work in the technology industry. So I'm an engineering leader at a tech company. But the cool thing about like what I do in my day job is like very related to all this home automation. So work in the commercial real estate space. Trying to help customers like automate their buildings and spaces, just like we
So you get to play with the fun commercial toys that then we get the little mini home versions.
Oh, the crazy thing though is like consumer is so much further ahead than commercial, and it's more open, of course, and a lot of times like easier to configure.
Yeah, I mean it's funny because depending on what you're looking at, it's a completely different world, right? Because every vendor has their own set of standards and set of instructions that they want to follow, right? Or a blueprint that they follow, and some of them are vastly different from each other, right? And it whereas in the home, that is the case in the home for a lot of the commercial pieces, but there's again a lot more open source alternatives. There's a lot of like open standards as well, right? Like even Zigbee, Z-Wave, and stuff like that. Some of that's used in industrial use cases, but not really, right? It's pretty much just, I mean, from your site, Jason, what, LoRa, and do you see anything else really?
I mean, LoRa, Wi-Fi, a lot of wired connectivity. So just for reliability. But one thing that we do see is, I know there's been a lot of like Matter and Thread like burn on the Home Assistant side over the past year, as that standard evolves. But I'm involved in some like working groups at the company I work for, that's trying to figure out like how do we extend Matter and Thread and like those protocols that started in consumer like into the commercial space.
Tell us a little bit about your home. So you told us what you do for a day job. How does that translate into your four walls that you live in?
Yeah, for sure. So I like my home automation journey has been long, like a lot of us. I was thinking back, like what my first like exposure to home automation was, and when I was a kid, I had an uncle he's a total geek, but like he had X10. Right. So I got exposed to like the little, controller next to the couch that you push buttons and turn lights on and off. Yeah. And then like, as I got my first house or condo, I fooled around a little bit with HomeSeer, but it was really immature at the time. And then probably 10 or 12 years ago, if anybody remembers the Revolve hub, like the little like red and clear, like little, desktop hub that I think Nest eventually bought. Yeah. Kicked off like easy cloud managed, app based, multi-protocol, even though they never really turned on like half of the radios in that box before Nest bought it and killed it. But that's where I kind of started going deep into home automation. And then like a lot of us, that led down the path to SmartThings, and went all in on the Samsung universe, for better or worse. I think I transitioned from like through 3 different hubs before I finally got tired of and even I don't know if you knew or if anybody ever played with the co-development that they did with ADT. So they had like an ADT alarm panel that had like a SmartThings hub built into it. So there were like integrations between alarm and and home automation.
Yeah, and then obviously Samsung bought them after all of that.
Yeah. Well, and that's where things started going a little sideways with SmartThings. And that's what brought me to Home Assistant. So just like looking for a more open, community supported platform for home automation. And because somewhere in that transition from SmartThings to Home Assistant, we did a big like remodel on our home, and that gave me the opportunity to like make every single thing smart. So like every switch in our house is a Z-Wave switch. Like all lights are controlled. Put in a lot of like LED strip lighting for accent, like under counters and things like that, which was a lot of fun.
And I know, I mean, we'll touch on some of your lighting pieces. And actually, you know what? Why not? No time like that. So
yeah,
I mean,
jump right
why don't
in.
you tell the world, Jason, what else you do on from a lighting perspective?
Growing up as a kid, I think I was scarred a little bit from like a Clark Griswold type of childhood of like getting thousands of light bulbs down from the attic and like taking like 2 weeks to put them up and take them down. And I was very against like doing that on my own home until I discovered individually addressable LEDs, like 2811, type LEDs. And, that took me down like the ESP32, rabbit hole. And it all started with just putting up like one strip, like along the front of our home and like gables of like permanently installed LEDs so that we could do, just like, red and green lights for Christmas or, pink lights for Valentine's Day or whatever. But it did not stop there. 2 years ago is the first year that we kind of started putting like some props in the yard that were run off of, ESP or WLED, driven ESP devices. Last year it got a little more out of control. I think we had maybe eight or 10,000 LEDs in the front yard, and like like a lot of lights. Which went like with any hobby, there will be some people that probably listen to this and they're like, 8,000 LEDs, like that's nothing. When you like, totally amateur hour. But the fun part is, just like any of these other hobbies that we play with, like 3D printing or whatnot, is bringing together like the physical, the electrical, and then like software and coding. So that's what like really got me on the like on the holiday lighting. And then naturally, and that's why Rohan's smirking, naturally you figure out, all right, like how can I tie this into my home automation system? Which there's a whole other like product set that does like the sequencing on the lights and all of that, through FPP and X lights, but all of those things are controllable through MQTT. So it's like really easy to program and to like start and stop different sequences with Christmas light setups. But the neat thing is, with other systems in your home being connected to Home Assistant, you can write an automation. So like my automation goes something like, turn all the landscape lighting off, disable all of like the motion lights outside, kind of like set the scene, and then start like the Christmas light show, which I think last year lasted something like 15 or 20 minutes. Neighbors loved it. And then after the show's over, kind of reverse all those like setting the scene things, turn the landscape lighting back on, turn like the motion or the video, the people detection, like outdoor lighting back on. So yeah, I think it's easy for us all to go overboard with anything. And this year will be bigger and better.
You're not done yet.
Wait.
Do you have an end goal in mind? Like,
I'm not done yet.
16,000. I need to get to 20,000.
There's no finish line, Phil. Yeah, I think this year it'll be somewhere around maybe like 14 or 15,000.
Okay, so I've got a few questions. Let's dive in. All right, you're doing this all yourself? Like, there's a lot of LED strips. Like, are you going up there putting things on roofs all by yourself, and have you got like electricians out there to wire like extra power points up there for you? Like, how physically or like how logistically do you have to plan for this?
Yeah. So one of my like design considerations for all of this is, the nice thing is we have a single story like ranch home. So like getting on the roof is super, super simple. But storage, like we don't have a ton of storage. So like one of the design considerations was being able to store everything as compact as possible. But yeah, like I do all my own stunts. I think I had to wire in, I think I added one outlet last year, but the nice thing about LEDs is they're not extremely high load. So I think there's like 3 outlets that are running like those, 8,000 plus lights. And with the 14 or 15,000 that I'll have this year, I don't foresee like having to add an
And it's probably all
additional
under whatever
circuits.
15 amp, 20 amp breaker.
Oh wait, yeah, well under 15 amp. And you can, the nice thing about tunable LEDs, compared to like the old, incandescents, is you can tune the, the brightness, which obviously brings amperage and load down. Got any more holiday lighting?
It's funny too, because for Phil, this is also a foreign concept, right? So in one thing I've learned through doing the podcast is in Australia you need a Sparky, which is an electrician. I've also learned that part to do pretty much anything around the house, right, Phil?
We can do like low voltage garden lights, but we can't put an outlet, right? Because we're all 240 volt AC like as the mains, right? Anything after that, as long as it's low voltage, yeah, fair enough. But no, like I'm not going up there and wiring in a new outlet for lights, because I'm going, that'd be cool, right? Like no. Okay, so you've got all these lights in place. How's your cable management?
Lots of actually like lots of 3D printed like cable management stuff, like printed out like TPU, to kind of keep things tidy, particularly like in the yard, because inevitably every season something breaks, right? Whether it's a connector or a light goes out, you have to make it easy to service. Yeah, so totally solid on the cable management. And like I grew up like early in career, did a lot of like data center build outs and patch panels and things like that. So like having nicely laid out cable is part of the OCD.
How do you go with like weather? Like, because you're not taking these lights down. I assume they are up 365 days for the year. That means they're up for all seasons. Wind. I don't know what sort of weather you've got there. How's the longevity of the devices?
So the only thing that stays up year round is like a strip under our eaves. Like everything, all the other like holiday lights. Last year I put them up in November and they came down in January, so they were up for 2 or 3 months. But I also have a weather station, so my weather station is tied into that automation.
Of course it is.
If it's raining, then the light show doesn't come on.
Is there a reason for that?
Although everything is waterproof and watertight, it's just like one thing I've like read and discovered like through this holiday lighting hobby is you really don't want, they'll last longer if they are not running while there's like torrential rain or something like that. And people aren't going to come by and watch lights when when it's raining outside.
Save the power, right? Even though it's not a ton, but still.
Yeah. And all that power is metered as well, so I can tell you exactly how much I spend on holiday lights. I can tell you the equipment is way more than the power. Yeah.
Okay, so you've got your light show that is automated by the weather station. Whenever you buy a Philips Hue bulb or an LED bulb now, they always say, "Oh, this will last you like 20 years," or it's got so much hours. You just mentioned before, like having LED bulbs last longer. Have you experienced any failures in the LED lights that you've been put up already? Like, have you sort of seen that there's I'm going to need to replace these lights in X amount of years as opposed to what's written on the packet?
I haven't seen on the the strip under the eave that is permanent, that's up all year round. What I have those set up to do every night is almost like faux downlights, so like above like the windows in the front of the house and the garage and things like that. Like you've seen like the can lights where people have downlights. So they run every night, and those have been up for 4 years, and there hasn't been a failure. What I have noticed is there will be like failures, like bad LEDs, like out of the box, and on some strands, and you just either have to replace the whole strand or snip out and splice back in a new LED on the strip.
That's giving me nightmares just thinking of stripping out, splicing things in, like.
Well, and yeah, like splicing in like a replacement, LED. It's a little bit of a pain because they're in series. So when you cut one out, you actually have like 6 wires to splice back in.
Yeah, that's really
like 3 on each side.
What if you don't mind me asking, what brand did you end up going with for those LEDs, or is it just some cheap?
They're I sourced mine through a company called like Your Pixel Store, but a lot of this stuff comes direct from manufacturers in China, so it's not like off the shelf, like Govee.
Yeah, because I know a lot of those, like with the Govees of the world and so on. There's a ton of caveats there too, right? Where it's like, I know, is it the Philips Hue ones where it's like, hey, if you cut it, you can't use the rest of the strip or like whatever, right? There's certain ones that have those kind of things. So I guess this isn't that. This is just normal.
Yeah, this isn't like that. There, I mean, when you like when we were talking about like consumer versus commercial, like these lights are probably a little bit more on like the prosumer or commercial side rather than something that you would buy, at like a big box store. They're also a lot cheaper. Like if you were to do what I did with like Govee lights, it would be insanely expensive. But these LEDs are like 10 to 15 cents like per light. Yeah.
There's some other stuff that you did as well, especially with the holiday, like the Christmas time lights and stuff, which is, you had like a giant snowman and like all those things, right? And they're like singing with the snowman LED panels, I guess, whatever. And it's like their mouths move and stuff like that. From like, which I thought I've seen it before, but it's like every time I see it, I'm like, holy crap, this is so cool, right? It's
yeah. And now you're like, oh my God, I know somebody who has
right?
it. Yeah.
And so when it comes to programming that, is that something you manually programmed all that in, or is it you have a controller box and like whenever they're like it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas and it starts mouthing that? Is that like how does that work?
So yes, there's basically an application for doing all the sequencing, and the application literally like says like turn this pixel on at this intensity at this color for this time. Now you don't it's not that low level of code, right? Like it's not like writing assembly code. It's all GUI drag and drop. What I did last year, like being the first year that I did like full sequences, is there are a lot of companies that make sort of pre-built sequences like set to the music, and then you just map like your individual like layout on your house like to their sequence. So that was probably the most intimidating part, was the the sequencing. And when I discovered that there are a lot of vendors that make pre-built sequences, I bought things off the kind of like off the shelf for sequences last year. That's one thing this year I want to learn more about, is the programming. That's really cool. And the sequencing.
Yeah, I didn't even know there was that kind of like a marketplace for doing that, right? Which is
it's an industry, and an industry to the point that like how we have technology conferences, like there are like holiday lighting conferences that people go to.
Yeah.
Yes.
I haven't been yet. Yeah. Yet. Yeah.
So you've got the LED strip that stays up throughout the whole year. So is that the one that you're setting then for things like Valentine's Day, Halloween, or any of?
Yeah. So like I said, by default, it's the faux downlights. But then through automations in Home Assistant, you can say if it's if February 15th, then like run 14th, this sequence. Or if for Valentine's Day, it's Valentine's Day, I think, right? Yeah. Or if it's St. Patrick's Day, like if this date, then run the St. Patrick's Day sequence on the lights, and that automation is all done in Home Assistant.
When you say, so earlier you said with those permanent lights, you kind of mimic downlights. So do you actually mimic cans where it's like segment on, segment off, and then wherever you want a segment, you kind of, even though it's a full strip?
So it's a full strip, and they're like 2-inch spacing, but like above each window in front of the house, there's like a block of like 10 lights that are on, and then everything else is off until it gets to the next segment above the door, and then there's like another 10 or 12 lights on. So it looks, I mean, it looks different than like a regular down light, but it has the same effect.
All right. So I want to know, because I've always struggled with this because I don't have the LED addressable lights. What are the entities like in Home Assistant? Because I think Philips Hue have a gradient light strip, and I think that exposes like 3 lights where you can change, like 1, 2, and 3 have, these are the colors, right? But when you get into the addressable things, right, there's, I'm guessing it's hundreds of different permutations that you could have.
Same exact thing though. Like the UI that gets exposed. So there's a WLED add-on or extension within Home Assistant, and the way that it's exposed is exactly the same as a Hue light strip or a Govee light strip.
Right. So for one light strip, you could have, like 10 light entities or whatever.
Yeah. When you create, so in WLED, you can create segments, right? And that segment would literally be like, you'd say light 1 through 20 is, segment 1, 21 through 42 is segment 2. And then you can control those segments independently. And then of course you can create like groups of segments, right? So that's what I do with the downlights is I define like what all those segments are and then put those segments into a group. And then the automation just controls that group.
I've seen some crazy like light shows that you've done, right? How do you then get like the effects, like the chasing around? Surely that can't be Home Assistant. Like if I was doing that in Home Assistant, there would be like delays left, right, and center, like things would misfire. Yours is like, bam, perfect. Obviously you spend a lot of time doing it, but is there like, does WLED have another like process that you can then call a script to run this program or whatever?
Yeah, WLED has the concept of effects. So all of those effects are being like run locally on the ESP device through WLED. Yeah, I'll send you lots of links. Phil,
I'm already sold.
You're gonna have holiday lights this
year. That's what I want to know, right? It's Phil's asking a lot of very specific, pointed questions.
Yeah. Yes. I have spreadsheets and detail files, Phil. Like it's gonna be easy for you to get on this.
I don't have to pick up a soldering iron. I'll be fine.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Yeah. Oh no, there might be a little soldering involved. Okay.
No, like I think it's just like addressable LEDs are just something I've always wanted to get into, but then like I've had like the 50/50 LED strips, right, where I've had to snip it and then try and join it together with those little crappy plastic connectors, and it's always failed. I've never had a success. And I'm like, I couldn't imagine trying to do this with like an addressable LED strip that's probably 10 times the cost, and I stuff it up, and I'm going to be so annoyed at myself, right?
It's fun though, and the best side effect. I know we always talk about, wife or spouse approval factor. Like because I was so resistant on putting holiday decorations up because of my childhood trauma. When I discovered this, like. Wendy was like over the moon. Like she loves it. She's like, I don't care how much money I don't care how much money you spend on this. Like, as long as you keep doing it, I'll be happy. So I know like on hobbies and projects like home automation, like we don't often get,
So how long does it take you to then set up and put down these lights? Because obviously there's a lot, and you said you were traumatized from your childhood. Are you just reintroducing trauma?
Yes, yeah, and that was a big part of it is not not making it a 2 or 3 week ordeal of like tearing up and setting down. And there was a lot of thought put into, once again, everything coming down and being like packable. I think last year the teardown took maybe like a long afternoon, so maybe like six hours in the afternoon, and that included like one of our pieces. Rohan, if you remember the video, and I'm not sure if you saw the video, Phil, there's this 20-foot mega tree that had like, I don't know, like 4,000 or 5,000 lights on it, or yeah, I think 4,000 lights on it alone, and even that only took an hour to take down. Putting up takes a little bit longer, and every year you're adding a little bit more, so you kind of get like all of the base layout from the previous year, and then you're just like piddling on it, a couple hours a day here and there,
between
until
meetings,
the
between
holidays
whatever.
come around.
You just run out,
So that's why I said
plug
it
something
never.
in, run back.
Yeah.
And I guess because you
Yeah,
said that you had
yeah,
like
yeah.
limited storage space, so it's not like you have an ability to like do a pre-staging area. I'm guessing where you could
Mhm.
like put, I don't know, a few LEDs up, take them out one night. And...
No pre-staging. Just yeah, I think like I said, we do have an attic, so most everything is stored in the attic, and it takes a couple hours to pull everything down and a couple hours to put everything up. So it's not bad. I've tried to go with as much like magnetic attachment to the house, so I actually like attached like big like fender washers and then painted over them so you don't even see them. And then a lot of the light frames that are made out of PVC, like just like literally like snap to the house.
That's cool.
Plug in, some connectors.
That's a really great hack. Like
you're done.
Yeah, because you do it every year anyways, and they're probably going to be in the same place. So just
yep.
And do you just have some kind of marking there, just so you're not like scrubbing the entire house trying to see where this stupid panel sticks, or?
No, like that kind of back to Phil. You're asking about like cable management, right? Like I have a label maker, so like things get labeled, so exactly what plugs into what, and like what end of this light goes here versus over there.
I was thinking too, it'd be cool if you like even like take like a blueprint, right, and just take a projector and just project it against the house and be like, all right, this is going here, this is going.
Yeah. Might be. Well, I'll probably use like one of the people in like an internal holiday lighting like channel.
I love that there's a holiday lighting specific one. So.
Yes, there is. But somebody asked her like, do a walkthrough video, and I was like, yeah, I'll do a walkthrough video, because like a walkthrough video was also good for me to remember like how I laid it out the previous year.
Yeah.
So somewhere in like August or September, like I'll start getting in the mode of thinking about like how this year is going to be set up and laid out. And the neat thing about like the software package that you use for the sequencing, it's kind of like a digital twin, right? To where you're like laying it out graphically,
right,
in an application, so you can run the sequences and you can see what things are going to look like digitally before you even put things out
that's
physically.
Very cool. So you can actually see, all right, if a light is in this position here and then it fires at that timing. Yep. That's fantastic.
Yeah, that is really cool. Yeah, so you can basically just run a full simulation and see what it looks like, blah, blah, blah. That's neat.
Totally. And that's what, like, immediately after last season of putting things up, like I busted my laptop out and like that app, and I'm like, all right.
So kind of wrap that part of the segment up. Is that fully planned out? You've got everything you need, or is there still stuff you need to get for this year?
No, I think I have most of it. There are still a couple of like controllers and enclosures type of things that I need to get, because with purchasing thousands of these LEDs, you can save a lot of money by like their like group like pre-buys. That people will typically do like their pre-buys like early in the year, like in January or February, and then you'll get it. You'll get this kind of beat up box shipped across the ocean on some random Tuesday at home, and you'd be like, yes, like lighting stuff is here. Like it begins. And then there's a whole other component, like those singing faces or trees that you were talking about. Most of those are all made out of like 10 millimeter like plastic board, like corrugated plastic. So that's a whole other like sub industry of companies that make those that make those cutouts, and they have like little holes for every single LED, and you just like poke those through, and by the end of the week, like your fingers
so
are, like,
you have to manually. It's not just like this kit that just shows up with the lights strung or anything.
No.
Oh
no. You well, and like the orientation and the direction that the lights go like through some prop in the yard matters, because it's mapped into that sequencing software. So it knows, think about it like from an XY coordinate standpoint, like it knows that LED is here from a position perspective. And people are taking it even further. Like a couple of years ago, that software was updated to not just be XY, but also Z, and have depth. So the sequencing can be done in the, in like the Z
That's
direction
cool.
as well.
That is.
It's wild. Yeah. I haven't laid mine out like 3D yet. Like that
Is
might
that?
be,
Oh, I was
that
gonna
might
say,
be
is that
this year's
2024 or
project.
25? How far out are we looking in the roadmap here?
Maybe we'll see what the roadmap looks like. It's an uncommitted roadmap at this point.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Is any roadmap ever committed? Like, let's be honest.
And
There you
it depends
go.
on what
That's
bee you
it.
talk to.
Okay, so I have
Yeah,
you've got your lights automated based on a calendar entity, for the days of the week and all that. What is a cool automation that you've put in that's not holiday or fun related that that has come out of having these lights in place? I don't know if you've got any like other automation styles you've done, like, oh, actually I've got these lights here, I can do that, and that's actually a really good upsell life, right?
No, like other than like the the holiday lights for the permanent lighting and the down lights, I don't think there are any other like significant automations that we use
so
for
got
that.
like a delivery mode, it's Uber Eats night, so let's put the lights on outside.
Oh man, that's no, that's what that's what we need to brainstorm on for sure.
I mean,
Yeah. Well, and kind of going back to like the transition from SmartThings to Home Assistant, right? Like that, to me, that's the most amazing thing about this platform is like, if you can imagine it, you can do it. Like you're not bound by like what comes out of the box. Like there were some things in in SmartThings that like web core or something like that, to where you could do like external rules, rule
like
engines
or something, right?
But yeah. It was like not Samsung supported or anything like that, and there wasn't a super good community around it. But with Home Assistant, like if you can dream it, you can do it, sort of a deal.
Let's talk about some of the other things. And we went on like a 30-minute tangent here talking about LED lights, which is awesome. Lighting. I mean, I thought that was just the coolest thing when I saw it, Jason. So, I mean, when it comes to some of the other things you're working on, I know you briefly mentioned the word 3D printer, and you also do some stuff around like just do you do any circuitry, like any electronics kind of stuff there too? And what does that realm look like, and what are some cool things you're doing? And
with 3D printing and circuitry, probably the neatest thing I did is I have a Veridesk, like sit-stand desk, and it has like a manual controller to like make it go up and down. So through the power of GitHub and Reddit, I figured out like what the logic was for that serial controller, and then took I think a D1 Mini, and the serial controller was it was an RJ45. It wasn't Ethernet, but it was an RJ45 connector. So hacked together a D1 Mini and that RJ45 connector, and then 3D printed like an enclosure to go around it. So now like my Veridesk is home assistant controlled. So it's at a standing height every day when I come, when I start my day, and then I'll usually stand like through the morning, and then like manually, go to like to seated. But the neat thing about that is now that it's connected to Home Assistant, like you can see like how many hours a day, were you standing, and just like the data side of that. So that was a fun project, and that it took a while. And I've seen this with other people in like our community, is like, what's that first ESP Home project, right? That's gonna like make you go off the the ESP Home deep end. And now I wrote down like a couple of things. I think I have like 20 ESP 32 or 8266s in the house, running different projects. Oh man, they're I mean, depending upon the use case. So like the desk, the desk one is obviously like, connected to my desk. Probably the other big ESP project was irrigation and leak mitigation. So living in the southern US, my house is on a slab, so I don't have a basement. So the water, our water comes in like, the meter is 20-30 feet out in the yard, comes in underground and like under the slab. So it's not really easy to put in like a mow and flow, or one of those like lever turn off relay type of things. Yeah. So this is gonna require some soldering, Phil.
Once again, I'm an Australian man. I can't touch anything. Right?
So,
I gotta go plumber. Right? I gotta get Mario's plumbing.
Yeah,
Right? Mario Luigi gotta come do this for me. Right?
Oh, you can't. Yeah. So I did my own plumbing too. So I knew the solution, right? Like my meter's out in the yard. I knew somehow I had to get wiring, like some sort of low voltage wiring out in the yard. We did a landscaping project last year. So I'm like, all right, I'm putting irrigation in. So I went and, like rented a trencher and like trenched out, stuff and laid 400 feet of PVC pipe like in the yard for sprinkler heads and all that fun stuff. But that gave me, the hole in the ground to get a wire from, that valve box where the water meter is, like up to the house. So I took that opportunity to put in sprinkler, like irrigation valves, as well as like a shutoff valve like behind our water main. And I sent Rohan a message earlier today. Like I actually got to test this. So in addition to that, I have the little Akara leak detection sensors everywhere, like under every sink, toilet, washing machine, AC leak pan, like everywhere that there's a potential for water to come down, like they're there. So when one of those triggers, it turns off the water main, it sends me a notification, and then it fires like a part of our like alarm siren like in the house just to notify people. So we had like a leak in our like one of the toilets in the kids' bathroom or something like that today, and I'm on a WebEx call and I get a notification. And I'm like, yes, like it worked, right? Because a lot of times yes, finally I have a leak. Because a lot of time, like we put these systems in, we build these automations, and we'll go grab our little Akara leak sensor, and we'll put it in a dish of water, and it works. And you're like, eureka, like it works. But having it like actually work when you have a leak, like that's like a big sense of like automation accomplishment.
Yeah. I had like in an apartment I was renting. When I first started with Home Assistant, like our washing machine, for whatever reason, it would just randomly flood and the washing machine was in the kitchen, right? So I did the same thing. I put like water leak sensor in, but depending on the way the water flows, sometimes the water would go around the sensor, right? So then you're looking at the kitchen, you're like, why is my kitchen flooded? And the light and Home Assistant hasn't told me, right? So no, it's nice to know that when you get those alerts, it actually did work, and
it actually worked. Yeah. Well, and like what I did when I got that message, like I put my video call like on mute, and I ran into the bathroom and I opened the faucet, and like the water didn't run.
Really
Nice.
It actually worked, right? Yeah.
That's funny. So talking about alerting. How did you, I mean, for that one specifically, or just in general, what are some forms of notifications and alerting and stuff that you do, and who do you send it to?
Yeah. So I have a lot of like groups set up. So everybody in our household has the Home Assistant app on their phone, of course. So we have groups set up. So for different notifications, different groups will get notified. So like kids might not actually know what to do if there's a leak, so there's really no reason to send it to them. So it just goes to like my wife and I. But for other things like integration into the dishwasher or the laundry machine or the washer, like whenever a cycle completes there, only the kids get it, right? Because they're like, it's like a notification, like go empty the dishwasher, or go fold some, go fold some clothes.
Have you automated to the point where whichever kid presses the "I've done this chore" button first, they get some extra credits?
Oh man, I've thought about that type of like complex integration. One thing I do like in that automation or notification workflow is there's no reason to send them a notification that the laundry's done if they're not home. So it checks their presence first, and then it sends them the notification if they're actually home.
Should have it as they walk in the door. Hey, welcome home. Now fold some laundry. Right?
Hey. On like on the Madam A, I've heard it called on podcasts, so it doesn't trigger everybody's assistant. Welcome home. Go fold the laundry. Yeah. So that's a fun one. It's just like the leak detection. That was a very practical one because we do like we travel quite a bit, and there's just the peace of mind of knowing that like when you're not home, that like it's like home assistant's still home.
Yeah. Well,
Like
it's funny
keeping an eye
that
on
that's the
things.
entire reason why I set up
Yeah,
Home Assistant, right? Because at the time I just bought the house, moved in by myself, right? My
yeah,
now wife, I mean, we were
yeah.
dating at the time, but we weren't living together or anything. And she lived like 2.5 hours away at the time. So it's like,
Hmm.
it was a bit of a trek to get to her
Yeah.
or if she needed to get to the house, whatever. So it's like, set it up. And then at that point, then I could just deal with whatever as I'm traveling for work or whatever. And
Another neat one. So I'm also just like a sensor nerd. So like you can see like an air quality sensor here. I have air quality sensors all over the house. And working, in an office that the doors are, kind of closed all day. Sometimes like CO2 levels will come up, and like we know that like high CO2 levels, affect cognition. So I have those linked to our to HVAC. So if CO2 gets above 1,000 ppm, then regardless of whether the set point is needs to cycle the HVAC, like it just turns the fan from auto to on until it gets back under a
So I have
CO2 threshold,
avoided for so
which is
long trying to
kind of
need to get
cool.
an air purifier. I'm like, oh no. But now
Yeah.
you're telling me there's sensors that can tell me when that stuff needs to come on. And now you've told
Mm.
me the actual health reason why I need to
Yes.
get one.
Yeah.
So now I have to go and get into this. Oh,
Yeah.
thanks, Jason.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's
there
like
you go.
that's the business outcome mindset, Phil. Like not just
Yeah.
technology
Well,
for
depending on where you
technology's
are
sake.
too, there's a lot of schools that are starting to, or school districts, school boards, whatever you want to call it, that are starting to mandate that too, right? Just because again, they're finding that students' cognition isn't where it should be if you're stuck in, I don't know, like a portable for 8 hours a day and you haven't got any fresh air at all, right? It's
And they double. You probably run into this. They double
yeah,
as a vape detection as well, like to be able to
yeah,
monitor like
yeah, which
VOCs.
is always fun, right? And
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
So you said you've got all these sensors. I know like Ryan and I have the same sit stand desk, and I could see, when I've never put my desk up, right? So thanks to you, I'm now going to automate every morning my desk being at the standing height. Thank you for that. Yeah.
at
Where are you
standing
seeing
height.
all this
Yeah,
data? Like,
yeah.
where does that then get pumped into? Like,
yeah,
and do you look at that regularly or?
Yeah, I mean, I think like a lot of us, the real time data in dashboards, but I also like ship everything off to an influx database for for data warehousing, and have some long term trends that I look at for like with the Grafana dashboard. Now I'm also very Splunk curious. I know it's more of like an enterprise product, but I've started forking all that data to a Splunk index as well, really to learn. Like that's the other cool thing about like home automation is if you are in the technology industry, it's a great learning tool. So yeah, I mean it's all it's you can never have too much data.
No.
yeah, totally agree. I mean, what other kinds of sensors are you running? So we talked about water leak, we talked about air quality and stuff. Just, I mean, like any other, probably, I'm guessing doors.
Yeah, I mean a ton of like every door has a door sensor on it. We have these French doors in the back that have like kind of I'm trying to remember the type of locks, but they're kind of complicated. And they have an open close sensor as well as like a lock sensor. So you can't. It's not a door that you can have like an electric lock on, but you can at least get indication as to whether no one's home and the back door is unlocked. But yeah, I mean, typical like door sensors. A lot of motion sensors and millimeter wave sensors. Like one of my goals is like touchless house, right? Like there's no reason to touch a switch in the house. Everything either comes on automatically or by scene, or if the Apple TV in the living room goes from idle to play, like it automatically changes the scene and vice versa. And I know that we've all had outages, right, where Home Assistant is down. And it's so funny how like we get used to things happening automatically in our house, and then you're like, oh my, like I don't even know how to turn this light on with the switch. Like what switch is associated with this light? So that's probably been the biggest thing over the past couple of years is just like, presence based, like room automation without doing anything, wild, like room presence, which I tinkered with a little bit, but it's so dependent upon, somebody having a device with them. Like I don't want a device with a person to be, the dependency for something happening in a space.
Yeah, I mean, even like my wife especially, but I do it too, where it's like, leave my cell phone in wherever, right? And I don't own an Apple Watch, right? So or a smartwatch by any means, right? And my wife barely wears hers unless she's going out, right? So it's like usually like for her, there's no electronics on her, right? And me, I try and keep my phone on me, but it doesn't always happen, right? And so it's stuff like that. To your point, I kind of need something else, right? And it's funny. I was actually this morning I was looking at presence sensors, right? So millimeter wave kind of idea, and I'm like, I should put these on, but I the only annoying thing is they need to be powered, like they're not battery based, but just I think it's just by virtue of it being those frequencies, whatever, right? Since when I was looking at 24 gigahertz, so I think that's the only annoying thing, because I'd love to have it just in like a top corner of a room somewhere. But at the same time, I don't want to run power to it, right? Or I don't want an ugly cable that's kind of just hanging there and that kind of thing. So,
is it, and it's also weird when you go to like a friend's house or a hotel or like an Airbnb, and you like walk into a room, you're like,
yeah,
like why didn't the lights come on?
It's well, I remember the first time I stayed at the Aria in Vegas, and it's you walk in and the curtains open and like it's this, and you're like, oh, okay, this is actually kind of nice. When you see it not in your house, and when you see it in like a I don't know, something you're paying to be in, right? Like again, from in this case a hotel. And you're like, oh, this is actually a cool application. There's a tablet next to the bed, and you can like turn on and off the lights and whatever, right? And I'm like, you know what? It's actually pretty well done for what it is. And you don't see that a ton in hotels.
No, you don't. I mean, I think it's becoming more common either at newer, edgier hotels. But thinking about it from like a business standpoint, right? Like, was that valuable to you from an experience? Like, if you had a choice of like when you went back to Vegas, like would you stay at the Aria because of those amenities?
And in all honesty, probably for me, just because I'm that guy that'll get into bed and be like, oh man, I left the curtains open, right? And it's like, exactly, right? And it's just again because that's not how my head works. Because usually in my house, it's done, right? Depending on where it is, right? Not all of my curtains are automated, but it's for the most part that's the case, right? And it's like, so yeah, I think, but depending on the person, you're right? Is there a use case? Is there a business value for that or not, right? I mean, in my case, I was just like, hey, this is like cool, but even you open it and you're like, man, honestly,
that's cool.
And I mean, I've been doing home automation stuff for long enough now, right? And even I think last year I stayed at the Aria. Still, same thing. I walked in, the curtains open, and I was like, whoa, that's cool. It's like
I'm back.
It's so common these days, but it's still kind of cool. Right? So
I think also from like, you got to think of like a business point of view, right? Like being able to turn off a room, like not having to send someone out to turn the lights off if the guest is checked out, and because I think like Jasper, in Netherlands has got his hotel powered by Home Assistant, right?
we had him on a few episodes ago now.
Well, and you just think about power savings, right? Like you can dynamically control. There's no reason to have the HVAC set to to 70, or like what would that be for you? You know where I'm going. Like 70 when nobody's in there. 21 when nobody's in there. Like, but when occupancy is detected, like you can automatically change it to to a comfortable temperature. Same thing with the lights and energy costs. Like that was probably the coolest thing I think over the past couple of years in Home Assistant is like adding energy in.
Before we get on to energy, I do want to just touch on the millimeter wave sensors. What did you go with in the end for your millimeter wave sensors?
It's a mix. I think I have 4 of them in the house now. a couple of the Akara, like the FP1, and then maybe an FP2 somewhere. And then I found, I can't remember if they were Tuya or some other manufacturer. One that's in ceiling that's really cool. So it's in my wife's office, like in the ceiling above her. So it's like really discreet. I did, Rohan, have to like crawl up in the attic and like run power to it. But like that's how I imagine presence, like individual room or like workspace presence, like working is above you. You don't really see it. So yeah, I think I have a couple different millimeter wave sensors from different vendors. I really want to get what's his everything smart home, like the yeah, Lewis. Yep. But every time I go to his website, it's like they're sold out.
Yeah, it's funny. He started building a new version of it, like a I forget what he calls it, like the light or mini or something like that. And I was like he posted it on Twitter, and I was like, oh cool. Like let me message him and be like, hey, congrats, whatever. So I did, and I'm like, let me check on the website, and it's empty. And he's literally just announced it, right? And I was like, oh man, yeah, it's which is awesome. I mean, it's he's a great guy, and it's a great product, but hard to find.
And that's the great, like in what I've played with, PIR plus millimeter wave, like you get the speed of PIR, but then the accuracy and sensitivity of millimeter wave. Hopefully like Lewis's idea gets replicated, and more manufacturers start making like
Yeah.
combo sensors like
Yeah, I
that.
mean it's pretty neat. I mean I and same thing, Jason. I mean I looked at his too to pick up the EP1, I think. And I was like, man, I can't find it. Right? It's
Yeah, I have played like with ESP projects. He has a PoE ESP32, and I picked that up for a couple of projects where
where you can get the cable. Yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
and I mean it's even from the ceiling one, right? Like going back to that, it's like I looked at that because we got pot lights put in our living room.
yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so that's cool. So now I have
Hmm.
that middle hole, right? And that's kind of where the power junction is. And I was like, crap, I gotta stick a transformer in here
Yeah,
now and all of that, right?
Yeah.
To bring it down to 5 volts,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
for USB and get those powered. But
And like in the commercial space, we see lighting manufacturers doing similar things, right? Of a light is not just a light anymore, right? Like that light can have a lux sensor in it. It can have motion and presence sensors in it. So like combining multiple functions into one device that's already getting power, and maybe even has
Yeah,
like
even
wired
like
or
exactly
wireless
like a BLE
connectivity.
sensor, right? So if you're in a storefront, you could track how people are moving around your store and where they're stopping and moving around. How are you tracking it? How are you using its data? Like, have you got solar panels? Like, is Home Assistant running your whole energy system? Or what the go? What's the go?
Yeah, no, no, I mean, so I live in an area where, and I know this is going to be extremely offensive to a lot of our European counterparts, but I live in an area where energy is extremely cheap, right? Like, 9 cents per kilowatt hour. So putting solar, I know, right? Putting solar up is not as much as I would want to, just for self sufficiency, reasons, or have battery storage. It's just it's not economical. But like monitoring energy, like we have, so a couple of things. One, we have a lot of power. We have power outages and brownouts. So not just monitoring like the consumers of energy in the house, but just the quality of energy in the house. So I know to do something or check something. Um, but then monitoring consumption of like individual consumers, that's where being able to track that data and identify like anomalies through ML models, to know, man, like the refrigerator is using 20% more power this month than it was last month. Like, is the compressor getting ready to go out? So the use case around like predictive maintenance in the house. That's why that's what I want to get to. So the first stage is just or the first phase was really just measuring things, and then once you measure things, you can start taking action on those things. I know a lot of people will do like dryer cycle complete or washer cycle complete by like integrating how much power it's using, and when it gets below a certain threshold, then the assumption is that the cycle's complete. We have kind of, when I went down the Samsung rabbit hole, we have Samsung washer or dryer, washing machine, and those are all like SmartThings connected. But for other things, you can do similar automations or actions. And I know a lot. There are a lot of commercial things, but that may have been my first ESP project. That circuit setup, if you've ever seen that, it's a very like DIY energy monitoring solution.
Like the with the clamp, what's it called? The passive clamps and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all CT clamp based, but the boards that they sell are like stackable boards that are expandable. And then it's just 3.5 millimeter, jacks that plug into the board, to the CT clamp. So I have it on my main, coming into the house, just to, measure overall consumption. And then any of like the big consumers, like refrigerators, AC, ovens, things like that, are individually like sub-metered.
Yeah, and you do that.
And once again,
or still with the
no,
CT
that's through like the circuit setup, like CT clamps. And talking about like back to like the job, like the day job, just learning about like sub-metering technology and how it works and the accuracy. It helps me be able to talk about it more intelligently in my day job.
It's and I think myself as well. I've used a lot of stuff that I've learned from from Home Assistant in my day job, right? Just depending on who you're talking to, what you're talking about, the automation idea.
MQTT probably like one of the most like applicable, with learning it through Home Assistant and then being able to apply it to like to industrial or commercial automation.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny when these kind of things we take for granted at home also scale out, right, to enterprise stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
That's cool. So what do you drive a lot of these with? Like I know that your end goal is don't touch anything, everything just kind of happens based on presence, based on whatever scenes, like you said, Apple TV turns on, do XYZ, whatever. How do you do your one-offs? Is it like you mentioned your Amazon Echoes, right? You said they word. What else do you do? Do you use your phone? How does that look?
I would say some things with phone, like garage door. So I use I got on the Chamberlain, when Chamberlain, stopped supporting that integration, got on, the Rat GDO bandwagon, and that works. I mean, that works flawlessly. I would say it has been more stable than Chamberlain was. So like garage door opening and closing, like I have a mobile dashboard that's like the default, like on all of our phones, that has like alarm and like the presence of family members, and then like a big garage door opener button. We don't do any open and close based on like presence or geotagging for doors. One cool automation that we do have is there's a camera inside of the garage, and if it doesn't detect motion for 15 minutes and the garage door is still open, it'll send a push notification, to my wife and I's phone saying, hey, garage door's open, nobody's in there, do you want to close it? And there's just like a button to say, yep, close garage door. So mobile voice assistant, and then I'd say like a few buttons, like the Akara Zigbee buttons. Like they're awesome, and they're cheap, and the batteries last a long time, and they're super reliable. That's probably like our go-to, like one-off, button push.
What is sort of the button?
Nice. Yeah, sometimes just that tactile thing is the most handy, right?
What is automated with those buttons? Sure. I have a whole bunch in a bucket somewhere that I had big grand plans for, right?
I'd say so. The one that we use the most, that like we use on a daily basis, is one that's like on our like on our headboard, and the neat thing about them is they have like single click, double click, and then like long hold. So the single click is to turn our bedroom lamps on, and that's the one like wife acceptance factor thing that I get in trouble for sometimes when things fritz. So can't remember if I'm using some sort of connected light bulbs in the lamps, and of course like they always need to be powered on. So I took the little rotary like
the switch on the lamp. Yeah.
I took that off, so there's no way to manually like turn the light off. And when things go on the fritz, like that's the one thing in the house that my wife like gets annoyed with is like I have to like climb behind the nightstand and like unplug the cord to like turn the light off whenever things aren't working.
But I love just what an aggressive move that is.
I took it off completely. Yeah. I hear about that definitely when things aren't working. But the switch above the bed, like single press, toggles the nightstand lights. A double press is like night mode, so it like turns all the lights off in the house, locks all the doors, and does like a couple of other like scripted automations.
So that's like a good night kind of. I'm going.
Yeah, just kind of like a good night routine. Yeah,
nice. Yeah, that's cool.
And that one gets used. Yeah, that one is like gets used every single night.
Yeah. I had a button that same thing, right? It's single presses, it turns off both the lights, and then press and hold is it turns off both the lights and the hallway light because that kind of sometimes peers in. So it's that one was a well liked one, but then same thing. It's like if it didn't work, it's
it
like
doesn't work.
I got yelled at, and it's like okay,
yeah. The other neat thing, and I know people have done DIY versions of this, but we have withing like the sleep mats for basically like detection if you're if somebody's in the bed. And that is integrated into the lighting, the motion lighting automation in the bedroom, right? Like you don't want the lights coming on in the bedroom if you're in bed, so it checks that through a condition.
That's nice.
So that's the fun part, is just like thinking through like the logic of
and that's where the power of home is
and building it out and
integrate all those random systems together and make that possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and that's like when you think about it, that's one thing I love, and I wrote this down, is like multi-protocol, right? Like thinking about like you got like a Z-Wave switch and a Zigbee, button and a Wi-Fi, sleep mat, and like all of these different things, and talking totally different languages, maybe different radio protocols, but being controlled by like the same rules engine, which to me is that's the magic.
Well, and all the closed systems on top of that, right? Like sometimes that are like, like the I don't know, the ecosystem behind like Nest or Ecobee or stuff like that. It's like, cool, I'm glad you can do this, or even HomeKit for that matter, right? It's
the HomeKit entry. So the only thing we use HomeKit for is we do expose the garage door opener to HomeKit, so that it shows up on CarPlay.
So you plug it in,
and
the
one.
So
well, and the neat thing about CarPlay is like it'll only show garage door, I guess, if you're within a geofence. So if you're like a couple blocks away, like it'll pop up like a tile for your garage door. On CarPlay. And I tried like whenever the Home Assistant app built the extension for CarPlay. Like I fooled around with it, but the native integration is way better. So that's the only like HomeKit bridge thing that we do.
Interesting. Yeah, I was actually going to say, because I know Apple and Android Auto, I believe, also have in the Home Assistant companion app, you can kind of expose it that way too, right? So interesting.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's like from a UX standpoint, it seems like a lot more clicks, because you have to go into the Home Assistant app and then find the thing and then click the button.
Yeah, fair. I mean, and is it? I haven't played with it. I know when it first came out, my wife's car has CarPlay, so I'm like, great, let me plug it in and see what happens. And I didn't have anything exposed, and I was like, all right, cool. So
I found it a bit.
Well, by unplugging and leaving,
you've got to go in and expose an entity and do something, and
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting. Cool. I know we're an hour and a bit in. Jason, I mean, what else do you got for us? If there's anything else, anything closing, anything?
Yeah, no, I would say so. The other thing that like I took notes on is just like what's what's for the future. And I think like a lot of us with Year of the Voice last year, the like the desire to untether from the cloud for voice assistants. That's probably one of my big goals for home automation this year is not just like cloud, cutting from the cloud for a voice assistant, but local on-premise LLMs for integration into the voice assistant. So I think I was telling you guys like pre-show, I bought a bigger Jetson, so I got a 16 gig Jetson NX, so I can run a pretty decent LLM like on that box. So that's the goal, is to to integrate that with some of the local voice assistant stuff.
Yeah, that's definitely neat. I mean, that would be, and I know there is, I wouldn't call it a focus, but there's stuff happening right within Home Assistant too, where you're seeing like the Google Gemini integration coming in, the OpenAI integration coming in, and Olama as well, right? So it's a little bit of foreshadowing there, right? In terms of like, hey, they might also be thinking in this direction, right? So
well, and there's just so many, like, kind of back to like the hardware and software and circuitry. Like I think you may have turned me on to this or someone else, like the Nest Mini, like PCB transplant,
the Anju voice,
it's really cool. And it's not, some things like you want to fool around with like 3D printing and have whatnot, but like having something that's like aesthetically pleasing, like sitting on the the nightstand, rather than this weird thing that came out of your 3D printer. It looks like you 3D printed it.
Agreed. It's funny. I mean, I've got mine that's just hanging out here too, right? Awesome. I had that same thought, and I was like, okay, I need to actually start doing this, but I again, there's way too much going on right now, so outside of pulling it out, I haven't done a whole lot. I primarily use the Amazon Echoes around the house. Just it's one wake word to remember for
that's what we use today, our Echoes. I have tried to limit what devices are exposed to it, just for privacy reasons.
I mean, even otherwise, it's like I don't need it doesn't do a good job when I'm like, hey, what's the temperature in the bedroom? Right, it's like, I don't know.
Yes,
like, bedroom doesn't support so you know that. What? You just don't need to know any of that stuff. I'll just
your bedroom doesn't support that.
Yeah, exactly, right. And it's like, so I'm like, okay, just here, like the entities you need to know about are like my lights and my like whatever, and everything else you don't need to know, and it's fine, right? You don't need to know, like, I don't know. I guess by default, certain things get exposed depending on how they are in Home Assistant, right, in the device, and. So I'm actually very specific and very intentional about what I enable and disable in there too, right? It's But yeah, I mean, that's the voice part is very, very intriguing to me too.
It's super cool. I mean, and that was, I think, in all of my iterations of Home Seer, Revolve, SmartThings, and then coming to Home Assistant, like the family acceptance factor of being able to like control lights and things like that via voice, like I think that's what got it for my family, for sure.
There's a bit of a design ethos
especially when they don't, like I said, they don't remember like, where's the light switch for the bar lights. I have no idea. And if I can just say, hey Echo, like turn on the bar lights, that takes a lot of the like the user friction out of it.
And even like a lot of my guests now have learned that too, right? And I don't know if you find that too, Jason, where it's like people walk in and they're like, hey, turn on the lights, right? And it's like, and I have the lights and stuff localized to the room, right? So it's like, okay, great, it'll just turn on the lights. I mean, it'll end up turning on all the lights, but
close enough.
You know what? Fine. You wanted light, there's light.
It's close enough. There's light. Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool. Yeah. So this year is the year of like year of local voice for me. I think that is probably the big thing.
That's I mean, it's your own ear of the voice, right? It's
well, they just got timer support happening,
and
it's getting pretty compelling now to ditch it over.
Those are and that's what I looked at, Phil. Like you know how you can go in your Echo like mobile app and go back and look at like what are all the things that my family asked, and then you're like, okay, like Home Assistant can do that, but not that. So until it can do that, like it's a deal breaker to to make like local voice assistant.
Yeah, it was interesting. On the creators call that happened earlier this month, at the time of recording, that's the June one. Mm-hmm. Madalena was talking about just some of the stats around that, right? So we're talking about, hey, there's what's it called? Like there's timers coming, and there's a lot of that stuff happening, mm-hmm. and it's not by accident that they just happened to bring it in now, right? It's they actually did the research and they actually said, hey, you know what? The majority of people here are the top tasks that they do with their Amazon Echoes and Google Homes and stuff like that, to say, and one of the biggest ones are like alarms and timers, right? And it's like
alarms, timers, and music, right? And so I think that like we can go down a whole other rabbit hole of music assistant. Like I think that that's going to be like when a lot of the kinks get worked out of music assistant. I think that's going to be really, really critical for like local voice assistant control.
Yeah, and there's already a lot of people even on YouTube and stuff that are doing some cool stuff just with like in ceiling voice assistants, right? So it's hidden there. They've got a little mic array up top, and again, I don't know how well the mic picks up from however high your ceilings are or whatever, right? That's somewhere 8 feet to 12 feet, whatever that looks like. But it's still pretty cool, right? It's that really it's there, it's hidden, it's in the ceiling. You're not even looking at it, right? And it's you don't have like little like canisters that are sitting there, right? Or little screens that are sitting there. So
cool. Well, this has been fun. Like I said, I've been a long time listener to the podcast, so it's cool to actually be able to come on and meet you guys and geek out on.
Yeah, we wouldn't have a podcast if it wasn't for people like you coming to share your stories, right? So thank you for coming on.
Yeah. And
I can't wait to see what you're going to do this year with all your light show.
Christmas Light 2024. You won't be able to miss it.
That's funny. Well, Jason, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time and coming out here. And I know for us, it's a long weekend for I guess both you and I. So I appreciate you making the time and coming out. So thank you. And
cool. Thanks, guys.
See you guys next time. Cheers.
If you want to share your Home Assistant journey or come on as a guest, reach out to us at feedback@hasspodcast.io. That's HASS podcast.io.
The Home Assistant Podcast is hosted by Phil Hawthorne and myself, Rohan Karamandi. For links to topics we discussed today, check out our show notes on hasspodcast.io.